Devlin, Untamed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Platform.
iOS, it's only sport. Martin, Devlin, Lachlan, War. We do a 3-hour sports show every afternoon on The Platform. We're a radio station that's not on the radio, so you've got to download the app, The Platform NZ. And when you do, you can listen live. Otherwise, you can go back via Platform Plus and listen to all of the shows live. There's 9 hours a day of broadcasting. This is the podcast highlights of today's show. Dally M's tonight, who wins, what and why, and Paul Gallen thinking that Weeby shouldn't be Coach of the Year. What's all that about? The NRL Grand Final, we begin the big build-up. Former championship winner Brent Tate on this podcast. We also talk about Tay-Tay, because Taylor Swift apparently has broken the internet. I don't really even know what that means. But after appearing with Travis Kelce, two-time NFL Super Bowl winner at the Kansas City Chiefs, they have sold 400% more merchandise in the last couple of days. His jersey is now one of the top 5 sellers, 300,000 more social media followers. There's your plan, New Zealand Rugby. Find an All Black, get a New Zealand pop star, get them together, job done. But we begin the program, as always, tablets in hand. I say gather my flock. It is time for a sermon. I have 3 really good reasons as to why the Broncos must win the NRL premiership this weekend. Let's go to the mountaintop.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
Listen up, folks. Here are 3 compelling reasons why I want Brisbane to win the NRL Grand Final this Sunday over Penrith. 1, Jerome Luai. 2, because then we, the Warriors, would have lost to the best team in the comp. 3, Man City / Bayern Munich / Real Madrid / Novak / Verstappen. Back to the number 1 reason, Jerome Luai. And look, I got nothing at all personal against this guy. Nothing. I don't know him. I've never interviewed him. Most of the social media posts and antics I don't even look at. Most of the arrogance and attitude he's so happy to foist upon whichever fan base he does and continues to do so, I largely ignore. But in sport, we love our heroes and our villains. It's all part of the theatre, the pantomime, the continuous storylines. And he is a human headline. I have no ill will toward the guy. I just want to see his losing face again and revel in another petulant Instagram post. Hero to all Penrith fans, villain to everyone else in the stands. Back to reason 2. Look, it might be meaningless, and it probably is, but there's just something more satisfying when you look back over summer, reflect on the season, and know that the only reason you didn't win is because you lost to the undisputed best team in the competition, and wrapping it up again with reason 3. Because it's just a bit boring when the same old wins. Change is as good as a rest, right? Count them down. Luai, because then we'd have lost to the best team in the comp, and the same old. Those 3 reasons are why I want Brisbane to finish the season as champion.
Devlin.
What do you want? We want information. Information. You won't get it.
The Platform.
Brent Tate, minutes away. 1:10 time. Lachlan, what do we got?
Plenty, Martin. There's always plenty going on in the sporting world. I'll do my best to cram it all into a nice tight bulletin. The Black Caps, they've secured their first ODI series victory in Bangladesh since 2008, a 7-wicket victory in the third and final match overnight of opener Will Young scoring an 80-ball 70. Henry Nicholls was 50 not out, so a couple of good knocks from the Black Caps there. There is some good news coming out of Black Caps camp involving Kane Williamson. All signs pointing to him being available for the Black Caps World Cup opener against England next week.
I like it.
How involved he will be in these upcoming warm-ups against Pakistan and South Africa remains to be seen, and it won't be decided until the Black Caps are on ground in India. But Williamson admits he's not entirely free of discomfort. There's not a huge amount, although the load is going to keep increasing. That's in terms of his training and his workload and his rehab and whatnot. There's a bit of an unknown, but it has felt pretty good, really, in the last few weeks. Well, we saw it with Sia Khaleesi coming back from that knee injury so soon. Maybe Kane has also been in Fiji's having some of those leaves and having some things draped over his body to cure up this knee nice and quick. Very good news. Not solid, but good news so far. All right, the football fans played again this morning. against Chile, and they lost again this morning. 2-1 though this time. There were 3 goals in the match. They managed to actually have one for themselves as opposed to losing 3-0 the way they did in the first match. A stoppage time winner for Chile, so it was 1-1 for the later stages of that matchup. But it didn't matter. Chile won. As well as that, Hannah Wilkinson has apologised to the referees in Santiago. This, of course, after her striking of the Lions woman in that opening loss in Santiago. She's apologised for that incident, which saw her sent off. She's facing a lengthy ban. New Zealand football still waiting to learn the extent of said ban, but is it expected to be anywhere between 4 and 15 matches? And given the way they treat these sort of incidents occurring, I wouldn't be surprised if it is the full 15 matches. All right, Kiwi para swimming legend Dame Sophie Pascoe has announced that she is pregnant with her first child. The 11-time Paralympic gold medalist posted on Instagram that she and husband Rob Sampson are expecting to welcome their first child next year. Lovely news, very lovely news. All right, Namibia's Desailly has been banned 6 games for his dangerous tackle on France captain Antoine Dupont in their Rugby World Cup pool match just the other day. France obviously romping to a 96-0 win. Namibian captain Johan Desailly, 6 games he's out for that tackle. That's a bit, it was a head-on-head tackle. It's a bit extreme. I don't know if it deserves 6 matches. That's a long stint on the sidelines for Desailly.
Well, the Minnows always get smacked twice as hard, don't they?
Well,
it's
they
on the
do,
French
yeah.
captain. So, I mean, that's a conspiracy theory, but every time it happens, it seems to be the same result. So that's why it's a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I think you're right. Right, the Wellington Phoenix have promoted another youngster from their academy, making 17-year-old schoolboy Luke Supyk. I hope I've pronounced that right. S-U-P-Y-K, Supyk. He's been promoted and is their 6th and final signing ahead of the new A-League football season. That's what's making news, Martin.
Devlin,
That is a disgusting act.
the platform.
Brent Tate, he needs no introduction at all. 229 NRL games. Origin, Australian Test representative. Won a grand final in 2006 and played 3 years with the Warriors. So, a little word about the Warriors season, and then who does Brent think is going to win the grand final this weekend, Penrith or Brisbane? Let's talk about the Warriors, that game on the weekend to start with at Suncorp. What an atmosphere, what a game.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Look, obviously really disappointing as a Warriors fan, and but can be certainly really proud of their team and where they've come from. And I think there's plenty of green shoots ahead for the club. And as a Warriors fan and a former player, mate, I'm really looking forward to next year and seeing what they can produce. So it'll. Exciting times for the Warriors.
That's what we're all hoping, Brent, that it unlocks the potential of this club. You spent some years here. We loved you when you were here, and we just never kind of just got to where we're at the moment. But I suppose the key thing from here is not just having a one-season wonder, but moving on and building upon that. Yeah,
I think that's the important thing now, is having some consistency and being a club that's at the top year in and year out, in that top 8, making finals every year. I think that's the mark of where you want to get to as a club. And, the Warriors have taken a giant step forward. It's funny, I heard Andrew Johns on the Footy Show the other day talk about the Warriors and where they could get to next and, how they're going to do that. And, it is, his answer was pretty simple. It's going to be up to the playing group and how hard they want to work. And if they come back next year in the pre-season, knuckle down. They've certainly got all the talent in the world, and if they work hard and continue to have a similar attitude to what they had this year, well, they can be anything, especially with some of the key guys they've got coming to the club next year.
At the same time, the very realism attached to it is that Penrith and Brisbane are head and shoulders above everyone else this year in the comp. They're 1 and 2 for a reason. They both did exactly the same thing in their playoffs, smacked Melbourne and then had a great win over the Warriors as well. So there is a real gap between these two. That's why they're in the grand final, right?
Yeah, there is. I've felt all along, especially the last few weeks of the season, that there was 2 comps. It was Broncos and Penrith, and it was a rest. And I think the grand final is a reflection of that. I think Brisbane are the only team that have the strike power and playing the way they are to beat Penrith. It's going to take a mammoth job because they're a great club, Penrith, and they've been there plenty of times before. And experience going into a grand final, counts for everything. So, Broncos have got the talent, they've got the strike power and the firepower to beat them. But it's for me, it's just going to be how those guys that have never played in the grand final handle the occasion and what they bring on the day.
Yeah, of course. I want to ask you how to break that Penrith side down. But before we do that, this was a Brisbane side that last year had it in the palm of their hands, and then it all fell away terribly at the end of the year. So first and foremost, those guys had to live with that, had to accept that, had to come back and beat that. And that's what they've done this year. So the next step, obviously, is to raise that again and actually win the whole thing, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think, mate, good teams, Martin, learn from their mistakes and they correct them. And really, the Broncos have done that this year. We know they fell away last year, but this year they obviously learned from that. They made some adjustments to the way they prepared and the way Kevy's coached them. And, they've certainly got the fruits of that labour now. But, they lose Flegler and Herbie Farnworth next year, who are two really, really good players. So, when you get to a grand final, mate, it is so hard to reach. You want to win them when you get to it. So, for them to raise the bar, I think they're going to have to be at their absolute best. But that's certainly the next step for this Broncos team.
Brent Tate with us. Brent, can they play the same way that they did against the Warriors? There were two things I wrote down and I wanted to ask you about. One of them was obviously the offloads, which just, killed the Warriors. But it was the way that the offloads in the tackle, the players were turning straight away, putting their back to the opposition, getting that free arm going. So that's obviously a tactic. That's one of them. Plus also players in motion. I mean, one of the things I was watching was that every time that the attack was coming, it wasn't just Reece Walsh. There were 3 or 4 runners in motion all the time. Is that the key to beating Penrith?
Well, I think so. I think the offloads will play a big part in beating Penrith. I think, because they're so great structurally, defensively, they're really hard to break down. But, one thing Brisbane have got to understand is that the only reason you get offloads is by running hard, and running the break tackles. And that's what they did against the Warriors. They just, they ran hard, they found some space, and they're not a team that, genuinely offloads much, throughout the year. But, their attitude to roll the sleeves up and just charge into the defensive line obviously created some opportunities for offload. And, what Brisbane have got out wide is strike power. Katoni Staggs, Herbie Farnworth, and then, Ezra Mann and Reece Walsh, those sort of, and then you've got the 2 guys on the wing. Like, anytime you get those guys early ball off the back of offloads in a bit of broken field, that's going to be really critical and, for the Broncos to be successful against Panthers. Just getting those guys early ball and let them do their thing because they're a team that's got genuine strike weapons out wide.
I was so impressed by just the physicality and the athleticism. I mean, these guys, you're there, you're close to them, they just seem bigger and faster and stronger and fitter.
Well, the other thing too is having a week off at the back end of the season. I think, I just think when you've had a really long year and you get to the end of the finals, everyone's busted. Having a week off makes the biggest difference. And I think, the last couple of years we've seen the teams that have had the week off go straight through to the grand final because, the season's so hard and you're scrambling every week to win semi-finals, which goes up a level. It takes a lot out of you. So, look, make no mistake, they're a big physical team. They've got a great forward pack. And again, they're the only ones who've got a forward pack that are going to stand up to, the likes of Fisher Harris and Leota from the Panthers because, those guys are wonderful players and they won't back down. I think this is going to be one of the best grand finals we've seen for a while.
Who wins the final, mate?
My heart says Broncos, but I think the Panthers will be too good.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full.
Next!
We need to talk.
We need to talk.
We got a game to play.
We need to talk.
It is called What Has More Chance of Happening, Lachlan?
Next!
I present you with a scenario. I then present you with another scenario. And then you tell me what has more chance of happening.
Next!
Sean Johnson. This is all about the Dally M's. Sean Johnson wins the Dally M tonight, the major award. Or Andrew Webster wins Coach of the Year.
Andrew Webster winning Coach of the Year.
So
I think that has more chance of happening.
You're committed to Payne Haas?
Well, I just think there's a better chance that... I think Andrew Webster will get it. And I think it's... I just think Payne Haas is... I just think he would have gotten more points. That's my honest belief.
If it's
He was on top of the leaderboard
It's a bit of a queer system.
at the midway point of the season.
I would hope that the Dally M is the single best player in the comp, and for me, that has to be Payne Haas. Now I've argued, and I'll mention this when we argue about front row forwards about Adam, and I'll explain why in a second.
Next!
What is more chance of happening? SJ wins the DM tonight, or Adam Whanua-Blake. Actually, no, he's going to make, isn't it? He's going to make the two front rowers this year are Adam and Payne Haas. What's more chance of happening, that or Sean wins?
Adam and Payne Haas.
I think that's a lock. And the only reason that Adam Whanua-Blake wouldn't be one of the two best props in the comp is because of the two playoff games where he wasn't at his best. He was a monster during the regulation season, but he didn't really play to that level, and he'll know that. When you look at the sheer stats, the run meters, the meters after contact, he didn't play at that level against those two teams. But I don't think that means that he won't be voted in as one of the two best props.
Next!
What is more chance of happening? Sean Johnson turns back the clock, wins the Dally M tonight, or Devlin up the Watini Zalesniak wins Winger of the Year.
So Sean or Devlin?
Mm-hmm.
Who are the nominees for Wing of the Year?
Oh, mate, I've got them here. There's about 10 of them. Come on, I mean...
Because there's two of them that are picked. So he'll be one of two.
You think?
Just got to get the other ones here. Hold on. Devlin, Jermaine Asako, Brent or Dominic Young, Selwyn Cobb, Renato Mulatalo. I think it'll be Dominic Young and probably Devlin. The one thing is, and this is like, it's not even a criticism.
Well, he must get points every week. He must be picking up that single point.
He finishes off backline moves and scores tries. Outside of that, he doesn't do a huge amount compared to the others. He's not constantly breaking the line or attacking the line. He's not making sweeping runs. He's not getting a huge amount of meters after contact. Brian To'o does that a lot. Selwyn Cobber does that a lot.
What's his job? His job is to finish it off.
No, I know. And for that department, he will, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's not, because there's more of a multi-dimensional element to some of those other wingers who are nominated.
Does he get?
I think he does.
He does?
I think it'll be Devlin and Dominic Young.
Talking about Dally M's, people, what is more chance happening? Sean Johnson wins it, scoops the big prize tonight, or Payne Haas nets it?
Payne Haas.
Yeah, and I think, when it comes down to, and this is what I was saying before, in my mind, it's got to be the very best player in the competition. I would love to see one of the front rowers win it. It's like when it comes to the NFL, I love to see it when a defensive player wins the Super Bowl MVP. And the last one to win it was?
Last defensive player. Don't tell me.
You need a clue?
Yes.
Phone a friend?
Give me a clue.
Denver Broncos.
Oh, Von Miller.
Yeah. Sorry, but it normally goes to the Flash Harry, which is always the quarterback. And the quarterback that wins ends up with 300 or 400 passing yards during the game, don't they? And they end up, a couple of big drives and they win it. But, yeah.
Next!
What is more chance of happening? Sean Johnson wins the Dally M tonight, or Tohu wins Captain of the Year?
I think Captain of the Year will probably go to Adam Reynolds. So I say that the other one, so Tohu winning Captain, what was the other one, sorry? Sean winning Dally. I think Sean actually winning the Dally M has more of a chance of happening.
Next!
Then again, Tohu's done a brilliant...
Final one then. What is more chance of happening?
It's a tricky one.
SJ wins the DM tonight, or Travis Kelce starts calling himself Trey.
I hope the
now that
second
he's
one.
dating Tay.
I'd love it if that happened, because I'm done with humanity. I'm not interested anymore.
Blah, 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 blah. Jelly deals, egg and chip, down the rub for a pigs. Oi, what's that syrup? Miles Davis, ladies and gentlemen. Now, you're a man who's lived around treachery your whole life. In actual fact, one of your favourite friends is called Judas the treacherous one, right? So you'll understand where Eddie Jones is coming from then right now.
Didn't he say, though, before the World Cup that this was going to be his last hurrah?
Yeah,
I know
he
he signed for 5 years.
Yeah, he did,
but
right.
didn't he drop it and said, no, I'm going to be out after this, it's not for me, I'm moving on. And I saw old Shag the other day saying, the thing, do you think that even if he did sign for Japan, do you think he's going to be less committed to the Australian cause now than he would have been otherwise, and I 100% not. You know, he doesn't want to have to go. He's got to live in Australia when he goes back. He doesn't want to have to walk down the streets getting abused left, right, and centre. Yeah, I mean, I know he can handle it, but it's I don't see him as treacherous. Unfortunately, it's just the nature of the game. Do you remember old Lopetegui for the Spanish coach? And they sacked him because they realised that he'd already signed a deal to go to Real Madrid.
That's right. They did that. Wasn't that before the 2010 World Cup? And then they go on to win it.
Yeah,
And they brought back Del Bosque
yeah.
in, didn't they? That's right. Yeah, they did too.
Yeah, that's right. They brought the old geezer back. So, it's part of the modern game. It's part of the professional game. It'll be interesting to see whether he has signed or not, or whether it's just rumours. I mean, he's got loads of contacts over there. He's coached them before. He had success with them. I mean, they beat South Africa with him. And that was it 2015, I think, wasn't it? Now it seems like yesterday, but it's a fair amount of time ago. So I quite like Eddie Jones. He stayed on too long with England. They should have got rid of him. You see the pattern that he does. He's great for a few years and then he's rubbish and he destroys them. So, but I quite like Eddie. I think we need characters like him in the game, and I wish him well, especially now Australia are out.
Well, are we meant to feel sorry for Australia? I'm just sick and tired of constantly getting told by the mass sporting media what we're meant to think. We're meant to, the Women's World Cup is the greatest sporting event that's ever happened on the planet here in New Zealand. And now don't be mean to Australia because we need Australian rugby to be strong. Bollocks, we need them to be strong, mate. They'll sort their own stuff out. And if they don't, well, let's get our own backyard sorted first, isn't it? We're not in the greatest... Now, you're a man who's lived around treachery your whole life. In actual fact, one of your favourite friends is called Judas the treacherous one, right? So you'll understand where Eddie Jones is coming from then right now.
Didn't he say, though, before the World Cup that this was going to be his last hurrah?
Yeah,
I know he
dropped
signed
it.
for 5 years.
Yeah, he did,
but
right.
Didn't he drop it? He said, no, I'm going to be out after this. It's not for me. I'm moving on. And I saw old Shag the other day saying, the thing, do you think that even if he did sign for Japan, do you think he's going to be less committed to the Australian cause now than he would have been otherwise? And I 100% not. He doesn't want to have to go. He's got to live in Australia when he goes back. He doesn't want to have to walk down the streets getting abused left, right, and centre. Yeah, I mean, I know he can handle it, but I don't see him as treacherous. Unfortunately, it's just the nature of the game. Do you remember old Lopetegui for the Spanish coach? And they sacked him because they realised that he'd already signed a deal to go to Real Madrid.
That's right. They did that. Wasn't that before the 2010 World Cup? And then they go on to win it. And they brought back Del Bosque in, didn't they? That's right. Yeah, they did too.
Yeah, that's right. They brought the old geezer back. So, it's part of the modern game. It's part of the professional game. It'll be interesting to see whether he has signed or not, or whether it's just rumours. I mean, he's got loads of contacts over there. He's coached them before. He had success with them. I mean, they beat South Africa with him. And that was it 2015, I think, wasn't it? Now it seems like yesterday, but it's a fair amount of time ago. So, I quite like Eddie Jones. He stayed on too long with England. They should have got rid of him. You see the pattern that he does. He's great for a few years and then he's rubbish and he destroys them. So, but I quite like Eddie. I think we need characters like him in the game, and I wish him well, especially now Australia are out.
Well, are we meant to feel sorry for Australia? I'm just sick and tired of constantly getting told by the mass sporting media what we're meant to think. We're meant to, the Women's World Cup is the greatest sporting event that's ever happened on the planet here in New Zealand. And now don't be mean to Australia because we need Australian rugby to be strong. Bollocks, we need them to be strong, mate. They'll sort their own stuff out. And if they don't, well, let's get our own backyard sorted first, isn't it? We're not in the greatest position at the moment to tell anyone about anything to do with rugby.
Yeah, and exactly. And in fact, I think that's probably indicative of maybe the problems that the game's got. You look at it now, and these big sides, the tactical game of kick. It's just, there's something really badly wrong, and it's badly run as well.
Uh-huh.
And the Australians have been struggling for quite a long time now in terms of their administration. And unless they get that right, the game's going to really struggle. And it's the same in New Zealand. I can remember over 15 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, saying that let's take the domestic game away from the New Zealand Rugby Union because they don't give a monkeys about it. They're all so focused on the All Blacks and at the top tier of the game of Super Rugby and generating that money there that they've totally neglected it. And I know times change, but how hard would it have been to have made the Super Rugby like they do in Europe? But it's the clubs that do it. So it could have been the provinces here, which you'd spent 120 years getting provincial and parochial passion for those units. Then you come up with these artificial ones. Imagine Hawke's Bay or Northland or Waikato playing in the Super Rugby. And why not have them concurrently like they do in Europe? Like the template's there. Go and bloody do it. And if the game doesn't get enough supporters in it, well, that's the nature of the beast. You've got something wrong.
Two more things. You're convincing me I should get B in sport now because the Carabao Cup was on this. There's so much football. I just thought that Sky would pick all this up once Spark dropped it, but quite clearly, no, they're not interested in their customers, are they?
All it was a battle against Spark. And once they got the Premier League back and Spark died, they thought, why don't we bother spending money on the Euros? We'll give them that. And once again, and don't forget, Sky Sport launched their satellite thing on
Premier League.
The 1990 World Cup.
Yes,
when they got Sky Sport 2 running up, and went digital, then they put the Premier League onto that platform.
They did.
Because they knew there wouldn't be the uproar if they did it with rugby, but there's enough support for it to make it financially viable. And what have they done in return? Just contempt. I mean, you and I have dealt with them over the years, and you remember the arrogance that they used to have.
Good Lord.
We won't name names, but you and I know the characters. And they displayed that arrogance in dealings with these big associations.
Attitude hasn't changed.
We're the only one here, mate. We're not going to do it. Totally. And thanks, our good mate Tim Martin came in and rattled their cage a little bit.
The Tight Five.
5 separate sporting... Actually, let's do more. Let's do 7 separate sporting topics, roughly a minute each, and then when the bell goes, we move quickly on to the next one. Black Caps beat Bangladesh. 2 up in a 3 ODI match series. What does it mean? Do the Silver Ferns win tonight? Who wins the Dally M tonight? Thing I love about the NFL, there's only 3 teams that are 3-0 after 3 rounds. It's the best comp in the world. Tell me it isn't. Should Andrew Webster be named Coach of the Year? Peter Fitzsimons suggests Robbie Deans should take over as Wallabies coach instead of Eddie Jones. Who has longer in the job, Jones, or he's a champion coach, or Sean Payton, NFL winning coach for the Denver Broncos, and Taylor Swift and her influence after just a couple of pictures of dating a guy called Travis Kelce, who's a tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs? Has she revolutionized the NFL? Quickly first, Black Caps beat Bangladesh. Do you care?
No.
What does it mean to you?
Nothing.
Is it a result of significance?
Oh, I guess we won our first ODI series over there since 2008.
Will anyone remember?
No.
Probably not. When the World Cup starts, will we even know that we played Bangladesh?
No.
Do the Silver Ferns square the series tonight at Te Raupa?
Yes, I think they do.
Yes, I think they do. Who wins the Dally M overall tonight before we ask Brad Walter about this?
I think Payne Haas.
I agree with you. And look, I would love Sean Johnson to win it.
I would too, actually. I'd rather Sean win it than Payne.
Okay, just explain this award quickly to us. It's not best and fairest. It's meant to be the single best player or the single most impactful player in the competition.
Yeah, well, because it's based on a point system. Now, I think it's changed this year.
We'll get Brad to explain it.
It's
gone from 3 to 6 or something.
It's a bit confusing, but at least the way that I knew it for a long time, it was... you got awarded points every match, of course, and for the first half of the season they maintained a tally and a leaderboard, and they showed you what the points were, and they got to a point where it went behind closed doors. You couldn't see what it was, but you'd get if you were the best player in the game, you get 3 points, and then 2 points, and then 1 point. And I think
that's weighted towards the back, the flashy backs to me.
Well, I actually would say it's weighted towards teams who only have one good player.
And that guy stands out every week.
That guy stands out every week. He'll get 3 points every week. So Kalen Pong on the Knights is a good example.
Yeah.
Payne Haas and the Broncos pre this year is a very good example. You think about the Panthers, they've got a number of really good players. The Storm as well, especially in their spine. For a long time, a number of really good players. So I don't think it's a fair representation of who's actually been the best player. It's almost like who's been the most man of the match, if you will, per game. Which kind of makes sense, but also doesn't. But yeah.
Paul Gallen says Andrew Webster shouldn't be coach of the year because it's not about being the most improved coach of the year. It's about being the best coach of the year. And he says, this is Gal, this is Big Gal.
You can't say he's the most improved because he wasn't coaching last year.
Well, no, to Andrew Webster he's talking. Yeah, but he's come from nowhere. He's turned the team around, all of that.
I know.
So should it be Walters, Cleary or him? Do you agree with Gallen? What's the coach of the year meant to be?
I think he's right, but I think there's not a wrong answer with whoever gets it.
I agree.
I agree. There's a similar thing in the NFL the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl where our coach had an incredible season, won us the Super Bowl, and then there was the Rams that had a really improved season. The Vikings out of nowhere had a really good season. There were so many really good candidates, and the Eagles guy didn't get it, but it was kind of like, well, there was 5 guys who could have gotten it. So in this case, it's a similar thing where Kevin Walters is similar to Andrew Webster, but I think better from one perspective because his team was the wooden spooners when he took over, and within 3 years, it's got them to a grand final. Andrew Webster's taken over a team who only had 6 wins. Now they've got 16 and finishing in the top 4.
Compelling cases, both.
Yeah. Ivan Cleary has just guided his team to a 3rd minor premiership in 4 years, a 4th straight grand final, and they now have a chance to win a 3rd premiership.
Let's not undervalue that.
That's
because
winning.
It's almost harder to do that than it is probably to, what am I saying, win one, but to win it year after year after year.
And when they've lost key players, to still have them finishing top of the... Like, that is more on brand with the idea of winning, which is more so than what Webster's done. Webster hasn't really won.
I mean, look, I wasn't at all offended by what Gallen said.
No, he's
what
not
I was
wrong.
offended by is when the comments reported in the New Zealand media. Of course, there's no context put around those comments. And the blazing headline is Gallen says Webster shouldn't get the... Whereas in actual fact, when you read what he says...
He's not saying he's not deserving.
No, and explain it like that. Peter Fitzsimon suggesting Robbie Dean should return as Wallabies coach to replace Eddie Jones. Well, just go... I mean, I really love Peter, but go back to his record... And there's huge parallels to be drawn between Robbie Deans and Dave Rennie. Both of them excellent coaches. Both of them achieved a huge amount here in New Zealand. Both of them go to Australia, and it's a shambles. Their domestic competition isn't worthy. They barely get together more than one team that's competitive in Super Rugby. Their playing cattle is... you're not picking the best athletes in Australia and you're up against it again. I don't see a change of coach doing anything for the Wallabies. I think Steve Hansen was right. And we're going to talk to Steve Hansen tomorrow when he was made some comments yesterday about this, that it needs a complete reconstruction job, Australian rugby. It's not... Eddie Jones is as good as anyone you're going to put in there. Is Robbie Deans going to do any better?
No. Well, you're just shuffling. What's the term? Shuffling...
deck chairs on the Titanic.
Deck chairs on the Titanic. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like New Zealand rugby where, sure, you can change coaches or you can bring in some director of rugby or move something around, but you need to completely sort out the entire organisation, both from a head office perspective and a grassroots and performance perspective. There's 3 different parts of it. No, Robbie Deans won't really change anything. He's a very good coach.
Great coach. And he deserves it. Since Peter's brought this up, I would love to see Robbie Deans coach another international side other than Australia. Like if he took, hold of Wales, Scotland, he's not going to get Ireland at the moment, but if he took hold, say, of any of those 3 teams, damn, I reckon he would make a huge difference because he's a bloody good coach. 2 to go. Who loses his job first? Eddie Jones, champion coach, or Sean Payton, NFL champion?
I think Eddie Jones is safe. I don't think Eddie Jones... I think
he is too.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get...
Payton, by the way, people, coached the New Orleans Saints to a Super Bowl. He got banned for a year after he was... footage emerged from him in the dressing room urging his players to actually headhunt other players and knock them out. He's now re-emerged as the Denver Broncos coach. They just took a 70-point toweling on Monday. That's the 4th worst score ever in the NFL. How long has he got? I reckon he's got 2 more games
No, he's won for good. No, he's fine for a year.
You reckon he's got a year?
Super Bowl.
No, he's out, mate. He's gone.
No. Steady on. And in the pretty much every year, bar about 2 or 3 out of 15 or so, the Saints were in the playoffs.
Great team, mate.
They should have gone to a Super Bowl when they lost to the Rams in that championship game with a bogus pass interference that wasn't called. No, he's a very good coach. The Denver Broncos aren't a good team. I think people got swayed by
He invested in the quarterback, mate.
No, he didn't. The quarterback was on the team last year. He became the coach when the quarterback was already there. So Russell Wilson's downfall in production isn't Sean Payton's fault. He's kind of stuck with who he's got. No, he's safe for 1 year.
Yeah.
He's safe for 1 year. They could go 3-14. I think he'll still be fine.
Okay, well, what's going to last longer? What's going to last longer? Sean Payton in the job or the relationship between Tay and Trey? Travis Kelce.
Sean Payton will be in the job more than triple the amount of time that Tate and Tay together. I don't think it's real. I don't think it's real at all.
I tell you
That's not a relationship.
I tell you what's real.
It is a formed and forged friendship.
Well, I tell you what's real. It is the impact that she has already made on the NFL. Get this. Since Taylor Swift was seen in Travis Kelce's corporate suite watching him play on Monday.
With his mum.
A 400% increase in merchandise sales since then for the NFL. His jersey is now in the top 5 sellers. 300,000 new social media subscribers. I'll be watching a lot of American sports shows this morning, and they've all been talking about this, that the one demographic that the NFL can't seem to get traction in is women, young women, 15 to 25, 50 to 30-year-old women. Bang, guess who delivers it right now? You're welcome, says Tay-Tay.
Well, that's a thing. It's all planned. It's not genuine.
Well, I think it doesn't matter whether it is or not. The economic impact. So straight away we're thinking here in the studio. What All Black needs to date what New Zealand pop star to resurrect New Zealand rugby in the same way?
Devlin.
ARU, that's Andy Raymond Unfiltered. He joins us every Wednesday. Expert eye on all things Australian sport, in particular what's going to happen with the Dally M's tonight, as well as the NRL Grand Final. Let's talk about the NRL Grand Final to start with before I get your quick predictions on the Dally M's and stuff. From what you saw over the finals, these two teams, Penrith and Brisbane, did exactly the same mirror image, wasn't it? Both of them belted Melbourne Storm. Both of them comfortably took care of the Warriors.
Look, it's the same in the AFL as it is in the NRL. It's teams 1 and 2 after the regular season, proving that they are teams 1 and 2, and they get the right to face off to see who carries the trophy. And look, it's not always a perfect world we live in, but in terms of sport, I think this is the perfect scenario. This is the two footy sides and footy clubs that get the ultimate reward for being good and consistently good. So I reckon it's a beauty. And you'd have to look through very different glasses to most of us to say these aren't the best two sides. I think they are, and I think they've earned the right to be in the GF.
Do you think that they are what a weird question, but more head and shoulders of the rest than has been in recent seasons? Do you know where I'm going with this? That these two teams, to me, are on another level. I don't know how many seasons I've said, 1 and 2 are so much better than everyone else.
Yeah, I agree, Marty, 100%, mate. I think in the last couple of years we've sort of said, I've said Penrith's, on paper, the best footy side, and then there's 3 or 4 sides a rung below them. This year, I agree with you. There's 2 sides that are head and shoulders above the rest, and there's probably another 2 or 3 sides that are a rung below, and then there's probably 6 or 7 sides that are another step behind them. So, yeah, mate, it's that they are head and shoulders. And the good thing for the rest of us, the other 15 teams, is they're both losing a couple of players next year. In theory, that should even it out a little bit, but the systems they've got in place and the depth they've got in place, these two will be powerhouses next year, and again, really hard to beat.
Well, yeah, we saw Penrith drop a couple of absolute, top shelf championship winning players. Didn't seem to disrupt their season. So, as a Parramatta fan, do you spend another summer bitter, twisted, warped, and demented? I mean, how do you handle another losing, failed season? I'm saying that with some warmth and love, aren't I?
Yes, you are saying that with some warmth and love, you bastard. Yeah, exactly right. But I've got a positive. I've been doing off seasons like this since 1987. So I am well accustomed to being a Parramatta loser from October to March. And slowly towards the start of the season, I get on the high horse and I get confident and I start pointing out to anyone that wants to listen just why Parramatta, this is their year.
Yeah, same.
Then from March to September, they disappoint me again.
I do that with the Redskins every year, the Commanders every year, mate. That 2 weeks before the season starts, we're Super Bowl champions, mate. 3 weeks into the season, I hate them. I mean, final question on this. I've read some gut rot from, and I know that everyone's searching for an angle before the grand final, but the Sydney sides are banding together to support the Panthers because they don't want. I would say bollocks, mate. If I'm a Sydney side in Penrith, the last thing I do want is you meatheads from out the mountain winning it again.
I agree. I don't know where or how that story came up. Absolute crap. Penrith, because they've been so successful, everyone wants at them. And because there's a little bit of arrogance mixed in with the confidence, everyone wants at them. I would suggest to you 80% of fans would be really happy if these two sides bashed themselves into submission over 6.5 hours. And it
was 0-0. And that was at the end of it. They both have to share it and go home feeling sucked. That would be my beautiful grand final right there.
Yep, you're exactly right. So, mate, I don't believe any Sydney side or any Sydney fan base in particular is cheering the Panthers. I think that's garbage.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. The doyen, 50 years and more of experience. Brendan Telfer joins us as he does every single Wednesday. We have lots to talk about, including today in 1988, Ben Johnson DQ'd from the Seoul Olympics. He ran 9.79. Stanozolol. That was the drug that was in his system. This was the biggest drug scandal in the history of sport to that date. Brendan was there in Seoul. Let's kick it off with 1988. We were talking about this about half an hour ago, and the best thing was you were there in Seoul as the story unfolded. Ben Johnson. I'm calling it, at the time, it was the biggest single drug scandal in sport ever, right?
Well, I think it ultimately became that because I always remember one line that a British journalist used a couple of years later to describe that 100 metres final in Seoul in 1988 as the dirtiest race in history.
Wow.
And of the eight finalists in that 100 metres, and I can remember most of them actually, 6 of them subsequently were caught doping. So at the time, of course, it was all about Ben Johnson. And so everyone thought, he was the villain,
yeah.
and the only villain, but he wasn't, as it turns out. But I mean, it was an extraordinary race for a start off. I remember Ben Johnson winning it and breaking a world record. The old world record holder was in the race, a guy called Kelvin Smith, but Lewis was in second place. Linford Christie was third. Kelvin Smith, the world record holder, was fourth. Dennis Mitchell, who subsequently won, I think, a medal in Barcelona, was fifth. It was an amazing field. And I can still remember when I was commentating it, you don't worry about the time in a 100-metre race because you haven't got time to look at it. By the time you sort of take it in, the race is finished. So you only really concentrate on the time as soon as that hits the finish line. And when 9.79 came up, my gut instinct was, no, this is not for real. You cannot break, or you cannot take 14 100ths of a second off the world record. It doesn't sound like much, but I couldn't say that in a 100-metre race. And so I couldn't obviously say that. And so I just kind of was hoping that the tone of my voice, and I said something like 9.79, world record, can you believe it? Or something like that to try and kind of, at the same time, convince myself that I'm not altogether sure it was for real. So 2 days later, when I was having breakfast on a Tuesday morning or something, and we didn't have any athletic sessions that morning, we only had an evening session, so I was having a bit of a lie. So I got down to the dining hall about 9:30, and there were still hundreds and hundreds of people in there, but everyone was abuzz with this word that had just come out, that the IOC had held a press release, a press conference at 9 o'clock, or put a press release out at 9 o'clock, stating that Ben Johnson has returned a positive drugs test from his B sample. He's admitted the offence and has been stripped of his gold medal and his world record, and as they were speaking, he was being rushed quickly and secretly out of the country. But once the word had got out, there wasn't a great deal of surprise by a lot of the, hard-bitten, cynical journalists and broadcasters and ex-athletes who were there and up at the commentary positions later in the day. Something just didn't add up. And so Ben Johnson, was the fall guy at the time. And the irony of it all is that Carl Lewis was promoted to the gold medal. Linford Christie was promoted to the silver medal. And it turns out sometime later that Lewis failed a drugs test a couple of months earlier at the US trials in Indianapolis.
They kept it internal, that's right.
And this was the reign of Juan Samaranch, the guy who was running the IOC. And I do remember very clearly this sort of kind of impression that he gave, and confirmed for me from one or two people in high places, that he did not want to see all of the superstars of the Olympic Games being, kicked out or disqualified or not able to appear because they had fallen foul of drug tests. So he turned a blind eye to this sort of stuff. And subsequently, a couple of years later, there was a report put out by some medical science outfit that had reviewed all of the drug tests and the performances and so on, and claimed that 80% of athletes were on drugs at those games in athletics.
Yeah, crazy.
It was absolutely stunning.
Well, you've got to actually still also mention in that same breath, don't you, Flojo, and her records still stand, Brendan. So
well, that's right. Yeah, it was a terrible period for drug abuse, but the only consolation for Ben Johnson, who I felt had a certain kind of sympathy for. He wasn't the brightest spark on the field. He was a kind of a guy that
shy, had a bit of a stutter, didn't he?
And he clearly was manipulated and used by all sorts of people around him. And so I did feel some sympathy for him, but at the end of the day, he took the drugs, and so he had to cop it.
That's our podcast for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen to the entire show, 1 till 4, Monday to Friday, download the Platform app, and via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to whatever shows over however many weeks at your leisure, at your listening pleasure. Platform Plus. First thing to do, though, is download the Platform app.
Devlin.
You've got to love sport.
The Platform.